You have to be ready for anything, Jackson Whitman muttered under his breath as he adjusted the angle of the small hidden camera perched in the corner of Ethan's room, the soft glow of the lamp reflecting off the polished oak floor. Ethan, lying in his wheelchair near the window, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for the stack of picture books on the side table, seemed unaware of the watchful eyes ensuring his safety. Jackson's apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the distant traffic from the avenue below. Lila Thompson moved quietly across the room, her dark skin almost blending into the shadows as she bent down to straighten the blanket around Ethan's shoulders, her hands gentle and precise. She had been with the Whitman household for 2 months, yet each day felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm. Every action measured, every gesture calculated to keep Ethan comfortable without drawing attention. Her eyes flicked to the camera as if sensing the presence of her employer watching, and a small, almost imperceptible sigh escaped her lips. The room smelled faintly of lavender, a calming scent she had learned Ethan responded to during moments of anxiety, and the sunlight streaming through the tall windows caught the dust particles in golden shafts, highlighting the quiet elegance of the room, the warm rug, the delicate toys placed just out of Ethan's reach. Lila hummed softly, a tune from her grandmother's church choir, and Ethan's fingers twitched slightly as he followed the melody, a tiny smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Jackson, standing in the control room, just a floor above, monitored the video feed, tension coiling in his chest like a tightly wound spring. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled up to reveal toned forearms etched with tattoos that traced the story of his family's past. But the line seemed meaningless here, in this quiet moment of vulnerability. He had hidden the cameras not to intrude, not to spy, but to protect his son from potential harm, from accidents that could escalate in an instant, and from himself, in case he ever faltered in his care. He watched as Lila adjusted Ethan's position, noticing the way her brow furrowed with concern, the way her hands lingered a fraction too long on the boy's arm, as if willing to communicate comfort and security through touch alone. Ethan looked up, dark eyes wide and trusting, and whispered, "Lila, can you read to me?" And she smiled, her lips barely moving as she replied, "Of course, Ethan. Just close your eyes and listen." She picked up the picture book, the pages crisp and colorful under the light, and began to narrate in a soft, steady voice, weaving the story as if Ethan could feel each character's heart. Jackson's gaze lingered on the scene, a mixture of pride and apprehension stirring inside him, knowing that Lila's quiet competence and intuition were the invisible shields keeping his son safe, yet sensing that she harbored secrets of her own that had yet to reveal themselves. Outside, the city moved at its relentless pace, but inside the Whitman home, time seemed suspended, a fragile bubble of trust and care, the kind that could shatter with a single misstep. Lila turned a page, Ethan's hands following the pictures, and Jackson exhaled slowly, trying to steady the rapid pulse of worry that had become his constant companion. He thought of all the risks, the accidents, the unforeseen moments when his son needed someone to act before he could, and he felt a wave of gratitude for the woman who moved through the room like a shadow of protection, silent yet commanding in her presence. The lamp flickered slightly, casting long, soft shadows across the floor, and Jackson knew that what was unfolding in this room was delicate, profound, and possibly life-altering, though he could not yet grasp the full measure of Lila's secret, the part of her heart and courage that had yet to make itself known. He straightened, brushing a hand over his jaw, a silent promise to remain vigilant, to continue watching, to be ready for whatever the day might bring, while Ethan's breathing evened out in the comfort of the story, and Lila's quiet voice filled the space with warmth and calm, a small oasis in the otherwise controlled and demanding world of the Whitmans. The morning light spilled across the hardwood floor, illuminating the careful arrangement of toys and books that Lila Thompson had set up for Ethan. She moved with quiet confidence, adjusting his cushion and smoothing the folds of his blanket as she prepared for the day ahead. Ethan's dark eyes followed her every move, a mixture of curiosity and trust in his gaze. Lila picked up a small tray with art supplies, the crayons neatly lined up in a spectrum of colors, and handed it to him, encouraging him to explore the textures and shapes with his hands. Jackson Whitman monitored the feed from his office on the second floor, his fingers lightly tapping the polished wood of his desk as he observed every subtle movement. The apartment was filled with the faint scent of freshly brewed coffee and the soft hum of the central air system, creating a calm environment that allowed Ethan to focus. Lila spoke in a gentle, measured tone, describing the colors and asking questions that prompted Ethan to respond, his voice quiet but eager. She carefully guided his hands over the paper, showing him how to make patterns and shapes, her patience unwavering. Every so often, she glanced at the hidden camera, acknowledging Jackson's presence silently, as if reassuring him that his son was in capable hands. The sunlight shifted slightly through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the room, and the warmth of the light made the rich textures of the furniture and rugs glow, contrasting with the delicate vulnerability of the boy she was caring for. Jackson's mind raced with plans and contingencies, considering how to further ensure Ethan's safety while also respecting his growing independence. Lila noticed his subtle pauses, his attempts to grasp the crayons with precision, and encouraged him with soft affirmations, praising each effort and celebrating small successes. She adjusted his seating position to allow more freedom of movement, careful not to overreach, but determined to foster his confidence. Jackson leaned back in his chair, absorbing the scene, recognizing the profound impact of Lila's calm authority and intuitive understanding. Outside the windows, the city continued its steady rhythm, but within the Whitman residence, time seemed suspended, concentrated on the quiet triumphs of learning and discovery. Lila guided Ethan through a simple pattern, narrating a story about shapes and colors, and the way his small hands followed her instructions brought a sense of accomplishment to the room. Jackson watched, his usual control softened by a rare moment of gratitude and relief, aware that the hidden cameras were capturing more than movements. They were capturing connection, trust, and the subtle gestures that made the difference between frustration and growth. The faint creak of a floorboard reminded Lila of her own presence in the room, and she smiled gently, encouraging Ethan as he completed the pattern, clapping softly to celebrate his success. Jackson exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease slightly, and he made a mental note to acknowledge Lila's dedication in person. The sunlight continued to move across the floor, highlighting the rich contrast of textures. The soft rug, the polished wood, the smooth pages of the book, and the warmth of the light seemed to embrace both Lila and Ethan in a cocoon of safety and care. Lila carefully placed the finished artwork aside, praising Ethan for his effort and creativity, and he beamed up at her, his expression one of pride and satisfaction. Jackson's eyes softened as he watched, realizing that the true protection for his son was not merely the cameras or the controlled environment, but the presence of someone who understood, respected, and nurtured him at every turn. Lila adjusted Ethan's blanket once more, whispered encouragements, and allowed him to take a moment to absorb the accomplishment, the room quiet except for the soft sounds of breathing and gentle laughter. It was in this steady, thoughtful rhythm of care that trust was built, a foundation stronger than any security system. And Jackson Whitman observed it all with a deep, unspoken appreciation for the quiet heroism unfolding before him. The afternoon sunlight shifted through the tall windows, casting long beams across the polished oak floor and illuminating the delicate patterns of the Persian rug beneath Ethan's wheelchair. Lila Thompson moved with quiet precision, rearranging the stack of books and art supplies while speaking softly to Ethan, her voice a steady cadence that seemed to settle the room. "Let us try a new pattern today," she suggested, guiding his hands over the crayons, encouraging him to create shapes and colors he had not attempted before. Ethan's dark eyes focused intently on her movements, a flicker of excitement crossing his face as he attempted to mimic her gestures, his fingers trembling slightly with concentration. Jackson Whitman, observing from his office above, leaned forward in his chair, resting his hands on the polished, would as he watched the subtle interplay between caregiver and child. The soft hum of the air conditioning blended with the quiet scratching of crayons across paper, a sound that seemed to fill the space with calm focus. Lila paused to adjust Ethan's posture, ensuring his back was supported and that he could reach all the materials comfortably, her own heartbeat steady despite the intensity of her attention. The room was rich with textures, the smooth pages of the coloring book, the softness of the blanket, the polished surface of the desk near the window, and each element seemed to carry a sense of deliberate care. Jackson's eyes moved from the camera feed to the floor below, noting how Lila's presence was more than functional. It was protective, intuitive, and deeply empathetic, and he could not help but feel a quiet sense of relief that his son was safe under her guidance. Outside, the city continued its steady rhythm, but inside, the apartment existed in a bubble of focused tranquility, a space where learning, growth, and trust intertwined seamlessly. Lila encouraged Ethan with soft praise, celebrating small victories as he completed shapes and patterns, the warmth of her voice wrapping around him like an invisible shield. Jackson exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing as he saw Ethan smile, the first true expression of pride and satisfaction that morning. The sunlight continued to shift, highlighting the contrast between the elegant furnishings and the vulnerability of the child, while the quiet authority of Lila provided a balance that brought harmony to the room. She adjusted a pillow under Ethan's arm, whispered gentle affirmations, and allowed him a moment to absorb his accomplishment, the soft colors of his artwork reflecting the gentle care he received. Jackson's gaze lingered on the feed, the quiet rhythm of their interaction reinforcing the realization that protection extended beyond cameras or surveillance. It was embedded in patience, attentiveness, and understanding. Lila picked up a new page, showing Ethan a more complex pattern and guiding him through it, her explanation steady, calm, and encouraging, while his eyes tracked every movement with careful attention. The soft ambient light highlighted the subtle emotions playing across both their faces, a silent dialogue of trust and reassurance. Jackson adjusted the camera angle slightly, ensuring he could capture every subtle movement, every nuanced expression, aware that the room held more than just a child at work. It held moments of courage, patience, and unspoken connection that would define their day. Lila's presence, careful, considerate, and empathetic, filled the room with a sense of security, and Jackson, watching silently, felt an unfamiliar but welcome sense of gratitude and respect for the quiet strength of the woman guiding his son through a world that often seemed too vast and uncertain for him. The golden light of late afternoon stretched across Ethan's room, brushing the soft edges of the rug and illuminating the polished surfaces of the furniture. Lila Thompson moved carefully around him, her hand steady as she helped him reposition a small cushion beneath his arms, ensuring comfort and support as he leaned forward to reach the page of a new activity book. She spoke in a calm, measured voice, describing each step slowly so that Ethan could follow along without hesitation, and he responded with small nods and occasional smiles, his eyes shining with the satisfaction of understanding and accomplishment. Jackson Whitman, seated in his office just above, kept his gaze fixed on the monitor, observing the interactions silently, noting every nuance in Ethan's posture, every subtle adjustment Lila made, and the way she anticipated his needs before he could voice them. The room smelled faintly of clean linen and a hint of citrus polish from the floors, a combination that added to the serene atmosphere despite the intensity of attention required. Lila guided Ethan's hands over the shapes and colors on the page, speaking encouragement softly, her voice a thread of reassurance that wove through the space and seemed to anchor him to the moment. Each completed pattern brought a small burst of pride from Ethan, and Lila clapped gently, praising his effort and patience, her dark eyes glinting with quiet satisfaction as she witnessed his growth. Jackson's shoulders relaxed slightly, the tension in his chest easing as he recognized the profound impact of Lila's steady presence. The way she created security and confidence without ever overstepping or diminishing Ethan's sense of accomplishment. The sunlight shifted again, highlighting the texture of the rug, the smoothness of the table edges, and the delicate colors of the art supplies, all arranged meticulously to create a safe and stimulating environment. Lila encouraged Ethan to try a new pattern, demonstrating slowly and deliberately, and he followed, his small fingers tracing the lines she showed him, his concentration absolute. Jackson's eyes moved from the camera feed to the corners of the room, ensuring that every detail was visible, noting how Lila's intuitive responses anticipated potential struggles and adjusted the setup accordingly. The faint tick of the wall clock marked the passage of time, yet the room felt suspended, a quiet bubble where learning and care unfolded uninterrupted. Lila spoke softly about the story associated with each shape, her words painting pictures in Ethan's mind and prompting him to react with delighted exclamations or thoughtful expressions, each response reinforcing the bond between caregiver and child. Jackson exhaled, a mixture of relief and admiration washing over him as he watched Ethan's progress and Lila's gentle, unwavering guidance. The golden light continued to move across the room, brushing their faces and casting long, soft shadows that emphasized the intimacy and trust in the space. Lila adjusted Ethan's seating once more, whispered encouragements, and allowed him to explore a small exercise independently, observing from short distance while offering support only when necessary. Jackson recognized that the true protection for his son lay not in the cameras or monitoring systems, but in the presence of someone who understood him, anticipated his needs, and provided the care and guidance that allowed him to thrive. The room was quiet except for the faint sounds of crayon on paper and the occasional soft word of praise, a harmony that filled the space and reinforced the connection, trust, and sense of security that had developed between Ethan and Lila, a rhythm that Jackson watched with a mixture of awe and gratitude. The late afternoon light softened as it filtered through the tall windows, casting long, golden streaks across the floor and illuminating the delicate arrangement of toys, books, and art supplies around Ethan. Lila Thompson moved carefully, her hands steady and deliberate as she helped Ethan adjust his wheelchair closer to the small table where his drawing supplies were neatly organized, the crayons lined up in a spectrum of bright colors. "Let us try something new today," she said softly, her voice gentle yet purposeful, and Ethan's eyes followed her movements, a flicker of anticipation crossing his face as he nodded in agreement. Jackson Whitman watched from the office above, his eyes fixed on the monitor, absorbing each subtle gesture and expression with a careful intensity that came from years of managing situations where precision mattered most. The apartment smelled faintly of polished wood and a hint of citrus from the cleaner Lila used, a comforting scent that blended with the warm afternoon light and added to the calm atmosphere. Lila guided Ethan's hands over the paper, demonstrating new patterns and shapes, and she spoke in a steady, encouraging tone, describing the colors, shapes, and motions in a way that helped him anticipate each movement. Ethan responded with soft murmurs and small, focused gestures, his dark eyes bright with concentration, and Lila clapped quietly when he successfully completed a section of the pattern, praising his patience and effort. Jackson allowed himself a small exhale of relief, noting how Lila's quiet authority and intuitive understanding provided a safety and confidence that cameras and monitoring systems alone could never offer. The light shifted again, highlighting the textures of the rug beneath Ethan's wheelchair, the smooth surfaces of the furniture, and the crisp pages of the activity book, each element arranged to create an environment that encouraged learning and independence. Lila adjusted Ethan's posture once more, whispering gentle affirmations, and he repeated the motion she demonstrated, his fingers tracing lines and patterns with increasing confidence. Jackson's eyes moved from the camera feed to the room itself, appreciating how the subtle interactions, soft encouragements, careful guidance, and the patient repetition wove a web of trust and security around his son. Outside, the city moved with its constant rhythm, but inside the Whitman home, time seemed suspended, filled with quiet triumphs and the gentle cadence of learning and care. Lila introduced a slightly more complex pattern, guiding Ethan step by step while maintaining a calm and steady voice, and he responded with thoughtful attention, adjusting his movements to match her demonstrations. Jackson observed how every small accomplishment, every successful attempt, reinforced Ethan's confidence and deepened the bond of trust that had formed between him and Lila. The faint sound of crayon against paper, punctuated by Lila's quiet praise, created a soothing rhythm, and Jackson felt a rare, profound sense of relief knowing that his son was not only safe, but also thriving under her care. Lila allowed Ethan a brief pause to admire his completed work, his small smile reflecting pride and satisfaction, and Jackson watched with a mixture of admiration and gratitude, recognizing that the true protection and growth of his son came not from oversight alone, but from the presence of someone who understood, anticipated, and nurtured him at every turn. The sunlight continued to drift across the room, highlighting the warm tones of the floor and the gentle expressions on both Lila's and Ethan's faces, capturing a moment of quiet connection and care that would shape the rest of the day. The afternoon had begun to fade, casting a soft amber glow across the Whitman residence, the sunlight stretching in long, warm beams over the polished hardwood floors and the intricate patterns of the Persian rug beneath Ethan's wheelchair. Lila Thompson carefully guided him toward a small activity table, ensuring his wheelchair was properly aligned and that his posture was supported with the cushions she had meticulously arranged earlier in the day. She spoke gently, her voice low and steady, describing the new shapes and patterns they would explore, and Ethan's dark eyes followed her movements attentively, his small hands reaching out with curiosity and focus. Jackson Whitman observed silently from the office above, eyes fixed on the monitor, noting the subtle nuances of interaction, the way Lila anticipated Ethan's movements before he even acted, and the quiet confidence that radiated from her presence. The faint scent of citrus polish blended with the warmth of the late afternoon light, creating an atmosphere of calm focus, while outside, the distant hum of city traffic reminded them of the larger world beyond the apartment. Lila encouraged Ethan to trace lines and shapes with his crayons, her hands guiding his only when necessary, and each small accomplishment was met with soft praise, a gentle clap, or a warm smile that seemed to communicate both approval and reassurance. Jackson's shoulders eased slightly as he observed, recognizing that the true safety of his son lay not merely in surveillance or oversight, but in the attentive, intuitive care provided by Lila, whose presence combined patience, empathy, and quiet authority. As Ethan completed each shape, he looked up at Lila, a small expression of pride and satisfaction crossing his face, and she responded with encouraging words that reinforced his confidence and independence. The sunlight continued to shift, illuminating the smooth surfaces of the table and the vibrant colors of the crayons, highlighting the contrast between the child's small, deliberate gestures and the careful orchestration of the environment that surrounded him. Lila paused briefly to adjust Ethan's cushion, whispering reassurances and offering guidance in a measured tone, ensuring he was comfortable and secure, while Jackson watched, aware of the subtle impact her actions had on his son's sense of autonomy and self-assurance. Each moment was deliberate, a balance of instruction, support, and freedom, allowing Ethan to explore the activity with curiosity and engagement, while Lila's presence provided an invisible framework of protection and care. Jackson noted the ease and confidence with which she handled every interaction, her intuition and understanding of Ethan's needs evident in every gentle touch and softly spoken word. The room seemed to hold its breath, the quiet punctuated only by the faint scratching of crayons on paper and the occasional murmur of comprehension from Ethan, a sound that brought a sense of relief and satisfaction to both adults observing him. Lila guided him through a slightly more complex pattern, narrating each step with clarity and patience, and Ethan followed, his small hands moving with increasing precision, while Jackson felt a quiet surge of appreciation for the dedication and skill she demonstrated. The late afternoon light continued to drift across the room, casting soft shadows that danced over their faces, creating a moment of calm, trust, and connection, a testament to the careful balance of protection, guidance, and nurturing that Lila provided, and the silent admiration and gratitude that Jackson felt for the woman who had become such a vital presence in his son's life. As the afternoon waned and the golden sunlight softened into warm amber, Lila Thompson guided Ethan toward the corner of the room where a small sensory table had been arranged, its surface filled with textured objects, colorful shapes, and safe, engaging items designed to challenge and stimulate him. She crouched beside him, her dark eyes focused and attentive as she demonstrated how to explore the different textures with his hands, describing each sensation in a calm, soothing voice that kept him engaged and curious. Ethan's fingers traced the smooth edges of a wooden shape, then the ridges of a textured ball, his concentration absolute, and a small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth as he repeated the motions, encouraged by Lila's soft praises. Jackson Whitman observed from his office above, his gaze fixed on the monitor, noting how every subtle adjustment she made, tucking a cushion, straightening a book, guiding a small hand, enhanced Ethan's comfort and confidence. The room smelled faintly of clean linen and a hint of citrus, the sunlight reflecting off polished surfaces, highlighting the careful balance between elegance and practicality that Lila maintained in arranging the space. Each time Ethan succeeded at a task, Lila clapped quietly, her voice full of warmth and encouragement, reinforcing his sense of accomplishment and independence, while Jackson exhaled. Slowly, the tension in his chest easing as he realized that Lila's presence provided something that cameras and monitoring alone could never replicate: understanding, intuition, and quiet authority. She introduced a slightly more complex task, explaining each step carefully and patiently, allowing Ethan to attempt the motions on his own while she guided subtly, only intervening when necessary. His small hands followed her demonstration, his focus intense, and every slight success brought a flash of pride to his face, mirrored by the soft approval in Lila's eyes. Jackson watched, noting the delicate interplay of support and independence, the way Lila encouraged exploration while maintaining a protective presence that made the boy feel safe to try new actions. The sunlight shifted again, bathing the room in a warm glow that highlighted the rich textures of the rug, the polished wood of the furniture, and the vibrant colors of the toys and books, creating an environment that was both stimulating and comforting. Lila paused to adjust Ethan's posture, whispering reassurance as he completed a section of the activity, and he looked up at her, his eyes bright with concentration and satisfaction. Jackson's gaze lingered on the scene, aware that the quiet, deliberate care Lila provided was cultivating more than skill or attention. It was fostering trust, confidence, and a sense of security that could not be measured by any monitor. Each gesture, each softly spoken word, each subtle encouragement built a bond of connection and understanding, and Jackson felt a deepening appreciation for the patience, empathy, and insight she brought into the room. The hum of the air conditioning, the distant sounds of traffic, and a faint scent of citrus created a serene backdrop, allowing the rhythm of their interaction to unfold naturally, and Lila guided Ethan through the final steps of the exercise with steady hands and a gentle voice. As he completed the activity, a sense of quiet triumph settled over the room, his small smile reflecting pride and accomplishment, and Jackson exhaled, feeling the full measure of gratitude and admiration for the woman who had become an indispensable part of his son's world, providing care, guidance, and reassurance with unwavering dedication and quiet strength. The late afternoon shadows deepened as the sunlight slowly retreated, casting long, soft streaks across the polished hardwood and the carefully arranged furniture in Ethan's room. Lila Thompson moved with calm precision, guiding Ethan toward a new set of activities she had prepared, each designed to challenge his coordination and attention while keeping him engaged and confident. She knelt beside him, adjusting the cushions behind his back and beneath his arms to provide optimal support, her hands gentle and deliberate. "We will try something different now," she said softly, her voice measured and reassuring. and Ethan's eyes followed her intently, a flicker of anticipation showing as he reached toward the first activity on the table. Jackson Whitman, seated in his office above, kept his eyes fixed on the monitor, observing every subtle gesture, every careful movement, and the way Lila anticipated Ethan's needs before he even expressed them. The faint aroma of fresh linen combined with the lingering scent of citrus polish filled the room, mingling with the warm amber light from the afternoon sun, creating a soothing atmosphere that allowed concentration and learning to unfold naturally. Lila demonstrated the first task, moving Ethan's hands slowly over the shapes and textures while describing each one in a steady, calm tone that encouraged him to follow along. Ethan mirrored her movements, fingers trembling slightly as he tried to match the patterns, and a small smile appeared on his face as he successfully completed the first steps. Lila clapped softly, praising his effort and celebrating the progress, and Jackson exhaled, feeling a rare moment of relief as he recognized the subtle but profound impact of Lila's presence. The sunlight shifted again, highlighting the textures of the rug, the polished surfaces of the furniture, and the vibrant colors of the materials on the table, emphasizing the contrast between the delicacy of the child's movements and the care with which the environment had been arranged. Lila guided Ethan through each subsequent activity with patience and attention, speaking quietly to offer encouragement and gentle corrections only when necessary, allowing him to explore and problem-solve independently while maintaining a secure framework around him. Jackson's gaze moved across the monitor, observing the careful rhythm of their interaction, the small victories celebrated with quiet affirmation, and the way trust and confidence were growing in parallel with skill and attention. Each time Ethan completed a task successfully, Lila offered reassurance, reinforcing his pride and self-assurance, and Jackson noted how her quiet competence created an invisible layer of protection that went far beyond the cameras and monitoring he had set up. The room felt suspended, in a delicate balance of focus, support, and encouragement, the faint hum of the air conditioning and distant city sounds providing a background that seemed to emphasize the calm intensity of the moment. Lila allowed Ethan brief pauses to absorb his achievements, guiding his hands gently and praising his persistence, while Jackson felt a growing sense of gratitude and admiration for the unwavering dedication, insight, and care she brought into the room. The sunlight continued to drift, brushing the faces of Lila and Ethan with warm highlights, capturing the quiet connection, trust, and understanding that had been built over weeks of patient attention. Lila's soft voice, careful gestures, and thoughtful guidance created an environment where learning, comfort, and confidence could flourish together, and Jackson watched, silently acknowledging that the most meaningful protection for his son came not from observation alone, but from the steady, intuitive presence of someone who truly understood and cared for him. The evening settled softly over the Whitman residence, the warm amber glow from the setting sun filling Ethan's room and casting long, gentle shadows across the polished hardwood floor and the meticulously arranged toys, books, and sensory materials. Lila Thompson knelt beside him, her dark eyes focused and calm as she helped him maneuver the small puzzle pieces, guiding his hands slowly and patiently, while speaking in a soft, reassuring voice that allowed him to concentrate and feel supported. Ethan's small hands followed her guidance, and a subtle expression of pride crossed his face each time he placed a piece correctly, his dark eyes bright with accomplishment. Jackson Whitman, observing from his office above, leaned forward in his chair, his hands resting lightly on the polished wood of his desk, his eyes tracing each movement and interaction, noting how Lila anticipated every need and adjusted her support without ever overstepping, creating a balance between safety and independence. The room was filled with the faint scent of fresh linen, mingling with the lingering citrus aroma from the cleaner Lila had used, blending with the soft light and the quiet hum of the air conditioning to create an atmosphere of calm focus and reassurance. Lila guided Ethan through increasingly complex steps of the puzzle, narrating the process in a steady tone that reinforced understanding while allowing him to explore, and each success was met with gentle praise, a soft clap, and a warm smile that encouraged confidence. Jackson exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing as he recognized that the careful guidance, patience, and empathy Lila provided were more vital than any surveillance system or protective measure he could implement on his own. The sunlight shifted again, highlighting the textures of the rug, the polished surfaces of the table, and the vibrant colors of the puzzle pieces, creating a rich, inviting environment that complemented the focused and nurturing interaction taking place. Lila paused to adjust Ethan's posture, whispering soft affirmations as he absorbed the accomplishment, and he responded with small nods and delighted murmurs, his confidence and comfort evident in his expressions and movements. Jackson watched closely, realizing that the trust and understanding Lila had built with his son were as important as the physical safeguards in the room, and that her quiet authority and intuitive care fostered a sense of security, independence, and pride that could not be measured by any camera. Each gesture, each whispered word, each subtle encouragement was layered with meaning, reinforcing Ethan's trust and providing him with the space to grow, explore, and succeed under her watchful guidance. The faint sounds of the city beyond the windows mixed with the soft ambient noises inside, and Lila allowed Ethan brief moments to examine the puzzle pieces on his own, offering guidance only when necessary, while Jackson observed, appreciating the depth of connection and care unfolding before him. As the sun finally dipped lower, casting a golden glow across the room and illuminating the gentle expressions on both Lila's and Ethan's faces, a quiet sense of completion and fulfillment settled over the space. The day's challenges met with patience, skill, and unwavering dedication, and Jackson felt a profound appreciation for the woman whose presence had become essential to his son's confidence, growth, and happiness, understanding fully that the moments of care and attention he had witnessed were the true foundation of protection and trust in their world.